First of all, I want to welcome all the members of the Oak Park Area Association, Quincy Association, Heartland Realtor Organization, Three Rivers Association, and Hometown Association. That was five guys, right? Five? Okay. Welcome to all the leadership and members and committee chairs of all five associations. And today we have the pleasure of having Kerry Kidwell, which I'm really excited about having him on to teach about Robert's Rules. He's very experienced in this. But Kerry holds a marketing degree from the University of Illinois, specializing in marketing and consumer behavior. And he has over 46 years experience in real estate as a salesman, company owner, property manager, and instructor. He has taught in 8 states and for over 50 local associations. He served the Bloomington Normal Association as its president and was twice the Realtor of the Year, as well as the Illinois Realtor Associate of the Year. He also earned a presidential medallion for his work of the seller disclosure form that is currently used in the state of Illinois. In 2005, he was the chairman of the education committee for the National Association of Realtors, and he helped start that realtor advertising campaigns that you see on TV. So he has held 9 professional designations, and today we welcome Kerry Kidwell as our speaker.
Hey, thank you. Great to see everybody. By the way, I put my part of my outline up here is about me, obviously my introduction. But when I got started in real estate, that's what I look like. So things have changed a little bit. Back when we all had hair, right, Jim? So anyhow, it's great to see some of you. I see some people here who could probably teach this class. I see a couple of former IER presidents, Sue and Colleen, so they could probably teach this class as well as I could. So I am semi-retired. I do a couple of these things a year. I teach some leasing agent classes on Zoom, and I still do a couple board orientations. So anyhow, I have recently moved to Normal, Illinois. They used to say I wasn't normal. Now I am, because I'm a normalite. So anyhow, that's just a little bit about me. So I'm going to jump right into this. By the way, I told them an hour. We'll be done in an hour. Trust me. And I'll tell you what, one of the good things about running a meeting, know what time you're going to get done and hang in there with it. So a couple little comments to start with. You should all have an outline from you called Running an Orderly Meeting. We're going to go through that kind of line by line. Famous playwright, supposedly the father of drama, Henrik Ibsen, once said, "A community is like a ship. Everyone ought to be prepared to take the helm." Well, I'm going to change that a little bit and say that an association is like a ship. Everybody ought to have a chance to take the helm. Now, once again, realtor associations are like ships. Everyone should have a chance to steer. It's already on a set course. The captain follows the course given to them. They do not decide where the boat goes. The group does. Maybe you can make it go a little faster, a little smoother, and maybe a little bit more efficient. But your job is to keep it on course and not to sink it. If I remember right, I got this, I think, from when Gene Crosby was inducted as president of IER. I believe she's the one who used this, either her or Dick used this analogy at that point. So once again, you don't want to sink the ship. And remember, it's not your ship. You're the captain of the ship, maybe as a board president, but it's not your ship. So in leadership, once again, you're kind of the crew of the ship. Your president is the captain. So once again, you need to keep your ship sailing straight. So how can you do that? Well, one thing you do is start off by running an orderly meeting, having good meetings. I can remember being anywhere from local, city council meetings in my little town, all the way up to, NER chair and NER board directors. And I'll tell you, I've seen some really good leaders and I've seen some really bad ones. And the sad part is some of the good leaders may have been good behind the scenes, but you never saw it because they couldn't articulate it. I can remember, some of you are old enough to remember a guy named Russ Booth, who was NER president. Awesome guy. He ran such a cool meeting. When you got done, you go, wow, everybody got a chance to have their say. He was just so articulate. He ran it very calm and concise, and ran a great meeting. So do we have a chat box today? I don't see a chat box, but I don't see my chat box at least. But if you've ever been in a really, really bad meeting, I'd like for you to unmute yourself and just, you got, 30 seconds to share a bad meeting you were in. Anybody, what do you remember about a bad meeting? I'll start calling on people, huh?
We didn't get anything done.
Didn't get anything done. Why was that, Patty?
They kept talking about things that weren't on the agenda.
Very good. We're going to try to fix that today. And who else been to a bad meeting? You've probably all been there. You just don't want to admit it because the person may be in the room with you. So anyhow, once again, bad meetings, ones that don't get stuff done, ones that waste people's time. I'm a big believer in not wasting time. Also, I think if you're going to be a good leader, it's hard to lead a cavalry charge if you look funny on a horse. That's by our famous Bloomington Normal person, Adlai Stevenson, said many years ago. So you kind of want to look the part. So I know real estate is getting more and more casual. God, you remember the days of suits and ties? You couldn't go without a suit and tie on. I mean, people don't even go to funerals or church. I went to a funeral last week, and the husband of the woman who died had on some old blue jeans, and I go, wow, I'm in a different era. So let's look at two guys. Let's look at one guy. Okay, this is one guy. Okay, so if you had a really, really important board meeting and you're gonna make a really tough decision, how would you want this person dressed? Okay. Would you follow the guy on the left more than the guy on the right? It's the same guy. It's just one guy has this, in the second picture, he has his tats all covered up. So I one time was doing an orientation meeting, and at the end, the president always came in and swore the people in. And when he did, he must have been out and about doing yard work or something. He had an old t-shirt on and a pair of faded blue jeans and dirty shoes. And I'm going, and people just, when he walked in, I'm going, this is your board president. And people just kind of looked at him funny. I'm thinking, what kind of image does that send? So let's get into your outline now on page 1. First of all, have a reason to meet. Don't just meet because it's time, okay? And you always make sure in advance that everybody knows when the meeting is, and they get a call or an email before time as a reminder. Always a good reason, always a good time to ask for an RSVP, okay? Because what you don't want to do is I've done this. You show up and you're the only person that shows up. No one else shows up. They didn't ask for RSVPs. No one made it. It's just a waste of time for people to show up, especially as we're getting bigger and bigger associations and travel farther. At least Zoom has helped out a little bit for meetings, but people don't show up, okay? Also, this is not in your outline, but there are different. I was doing this episode for Missouri Association of Realtors a couple of years ago, and their powers that be wanted me to throw this in because they were having problems with a couple of their elected leadership. So remember, there's different kinds of communication we have. We're talking about RSVPs here. We have staff to staff, leadership to leadership, and then we have, obviously the different combinations thereon. But one thing you got to be important, make sure you understand, is that as an elected leader, you should not be contacting membership about things without running it past your CEO to begin with. Okay, staff should have input on what goes out to membership, and especially if it's a public comment. Sometimes we have controversial issues. I know some associations actually have bylaws that say you cannot make a public statement as elected official without board of directors approval, and that should be the case. You should, if a reporter comes to you and asks for comments on something that's pending, it's especially controversial, you should go call your CEO to start with and do that. So another issue we had was I had a CEO once who wanted me to make sure that leadership understood that they have hours too, and you should respect their hours, because this person was having a board president call or text at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night about trivial things like, well, what's going to be, we have chicken or fish next week for, the meal. That stuff can wait till tomorrow. So once again, respect your paid your paid staff's time as well as your own. So just a little off the side there for you. So at your very first meeting, I don't care if you're in the board of directors, whatever you're on, make sure you make introductions. We always assume that everybody knows everybody, but that's not always the case. So make sure you get introductions done. Your first meeting of the year, you should review your committee's place in the association. And also a good time to look at the strat plan. What's the strat plan say about my committee or my group? And the first meeting is also a good time to set and prioritize your goals for this coming year. And when you're doing that, you should know what your budget is, right? How much money do we have to spend? Remember, you can't spend money that you don't have, right? That have not been allocated to you. So once again, you may want to set a regular meeting date, like the third Tuesday or something of each month. No matter what you do, it's always good to look at the next meeting date before you leave that current meeting, okay? Also, do not work on items outside your purpose. We waste a lot of times talking about things or doing that our committee has nothing to do with. And that's, once again, a big time waster. So your committee chair has a lot of responsibilities too. Remember that the chair does not make a decision, it reports them. Unfortunately, some people think when they become the chair of a committee or president of the association, they think they're in charge now and their ideas fly. That's not how it works. It should be the content and what you pass and what you act on should be done by committees and the board of directors, not one person, okay? Also important for members to remove their company hat when they walk into the room. Should not be doing things, and once again, if you got a conflict of interest, you should be stating that right up front, okay? And remember that your actions, whatever you do, should match the strat plan, okay? As a meeting starts, first of all, start on time, okay? Do not punish people who are on time. You punish someone for letting them sit there for 10 minutes, waiting for someone who's notoriously late. One time in Bloomington, we had a treasurer who was eventually president, but he was notoriously late for all meetings. And so at a finance committee meeting one time, which he was chair of, we got tired of waiting for him. We picked a new chair, and we had a meeting, and we had a quorum, so not a problem. And we were walking out, and he was walking in. He goes, "Where are you guys going?" I go, "Yep, we're done." "What do you mean you're done?" "Well, the meeting started 20 minutes ago, so there you go. We're done." You know what? He didn't miss the meeting again after that. Got there on time. And you should also have a time goal. I personally, 1 hour. 1 hour is a great time goal. And if you're gonna have a long meeting, if you're gonna have a meeting like you got strat plan, maybe it's a half a day or a full day, people should have an idea when it's going to end. Otherwise, if it doesn't, people are going to start trickling out on you, and you eventually lose your quorum. Now, depending on your association, attendance may be required. Some bylaws say that if you miss so many meetings of a committee or board of directors, you automatically are resigned, okay? So once again, you're going to need to follow the agenda. You do not, as Patty pointed out, do not allow for long digressions, okay? If it's not on topic, I can, if you want to follow Robert's Rules of Order to the T, I would tell you that anything that's being discussed that does not have a motion on the floor is most likely out of order, okay? Now, there are times you do discuss things that are not a motion, but most times you want to have something on the floor to get it going. So when you see these kind of things happening, when you see people digressing, always good. Here's how you stop it and being polite. Okay, that's a great idea. I would entertain a motion to that effect. Okay, so you want to try to get a motion on the floor. That sometimes will shut them up or get them to move on and make a motion. That's fine. The best leader I've always saw that ran meetings summarized as you go. Okay, you always knew what you're voting on. You always knew what the outcome was. You always knew. I can name a couple of NAR presidents who are really good at it, and I can name a couple who we were always lost when we were in the board of directors meeting. Where are we at now? Who knows? So always make sure they know what they're voting on. When you get ready to vote, it's always a good time to stop and say, okay, does everybody understand what we're voting on? Here is the motion. Okay, that's always the best way to handle it. So as a chair, what you want to do is make sure that everybody gets a chance to be heard. And if someone's not speaking up, it's a good time to ask for an opinion. Okay, so I could say, like, well, Jay, you've been awful quiet today. What do you think about this? Now, to tell you how this goes the wrong direction, many years ago in Bloomington, we had a very, what's a good word for him? Obstinate board president. I think that's a good word. And he could be outspoken and rude. And we had a lady who was the top agent in town. She was very smart, great personality, would have made a great leader. We finally get her to come in as a chair of the MLS committee. Well, at a meeting, her committee, not her committee passed a motion which she presented to the board of directors. And he looked at her and he goes, "That's the most stupid thing I've ever heard in my life. I can't believe you had the guts to bring that in front of this body." And she was shy anyhow. She sat back down. I don't think she said a thing the rest of the year, and did not move through the chairs as she should have, just because of him. It was such a jerk thing to do. Okay. You want people to speak up, okay? And you do not criticize, once again, if you don't like it, vote it down. You don't have to make this personal. Sometimes you'll get a group of people, strong personalities. You get one or two that like to intimidate. That's when it's up to you to say, okay, you've had your say now. Let's hear what some of the other people say. Okay, and there are ways to do it politely, not to offend people. Also, if you want to follow Robert's rules to the T, you should alternate between pro and con. Now, it's not always easy to do because you don't know how people they're going to say when they raise their hand. So a good thing to do is just say, okay, we've heard a couple pros. Does anybody want to speak to the other side of this issue? And give them a chance to speak up and say something. So alternating between pro and con is always a good thing. Now, while we're doing this, I always have a scratch paper at my where was a chair or a president or anything. I always have to have scratch paper. And what I would do is when someone, you got an issue and 5 people raise their hand, so I'd write down their names. Okay, we got John, Sally, Beth, Harry, whatever. And then I'd say, okay, John, you're first, and I have Harry. And then okay, now Harry, it's your turn. Now I got John after you. That way, everybody's not going this, they're waving their hand. They want to see you, oh my God, we're calling me. They know that they're on the list. So I always kept a list as we went of who says what to whom. It's also good to have scratch paper to write down a motion sometimes, especially if you don't have someone there taking notes for you. So one thing you want to make sure happens is also that action items are taken care of. Who's going to do it and when it's going to be done. Okay. I see people pass motions, come back the next month and go, well, whatever happened to that? Well, I don't know. Did you do it? No, I didn't do it. You do it? No. No one decided who's going to do it. So who's going to do it and when they're going to do it? And by the way, your job is not to make, as a volunteer organization, is not to make work for staff. You do not vote that we make staff do something. Okay. That's up to the CEO decides who's going to do it on staff. Will it Sally do it? Will it Heather do it? Will it Jay do it? Will it Jim do it? Well, once again, that's not your purview. So anyhow, but you need to make sure someone gets it done. Now, as far as minutes go, you should have some kind of staff person or someone taking minutes. And it's a record of what happened, not what was said. Many years ago, back in the 80s, right before I believe it was 88, we changed lockboxes in Bloomington. It was an emergency thing. And at a general membership meeting, one of our elected officers was asked why we didn't have the association vote on this. And the reason was it had to be done right away. We didn't have time to mess around with this. We had to break in, had a little key stolen, they had to do something. So anyhow, she stood up and said she didn't think that the general membership was smart enough to make a decision. And so all the officers except me were ousted the next year. Everybody who ran, who was an incumbent, was ousted. But anyhow, in that time frame, they also decide, well, we're going to keep track of how everybody votes. And you should not keep track of who votes for what, okay? I've seen this before, John, who made the motion? Who seconded it? It doesn't really matter. Once the motion is passed, whatever. Now, Robert's rules does not require defeated motions to be in the minutes. However, I feel it's a good idea to have those. Therefore, when someone who missed last month comes back and wants to bring up an old topic, you can say, well, you weren't here last month. You look at the minutes, we discussed it, voted on a dead horse, okay? So once again, keeping track of that, but you don't say, well, so-and-so was outspoken on this, and she said this about that, that's not what we do, okay? You just say something like discussion centered around certain things happening, okay? And once again, Roberts does not like you to keep voting records. Once again, public officials, different story. Volunteer groups, totally different. So as far as parliamentary procedure goes, you want to follow Robert's Rules of Order. And if you, NER has an official parliamentarian sitting there on the stage with them, but you would look to your CEO or your staff for help if you're in that situation. Also remember that, once again, no freelancing. You don't have committee meetings on the sly outside of the association, not tell them about it. Staff should always be in the loop of what's going on. And remember, unless it's given to you, you do not have contractual capacity. I was in a group once in our association, and we had the worst of all possible worlds. We had 3 chairs. Bad enough having co-chairs. When you have 3, horrible. And I was one of them. Well, one of them decides that we don't have enough t-shirts to sell. So she goes out and orders $5,000 worth of t-shirts. And I've still got a half a closet full of them because we never sold them. Anyhow, we ate $5 grand because she did something. She had no authority to do that. But what do you do once the bill shows up, huh? Once again, do not work outside your committee's authority. So if you're on the board of directors, once again, vote it up, vote it down, or send it back with an explanation. You are not there to rehash and redo the committee's thing. If you vote it down, tell them why. It's a good time for a president to call the committee chair and say, here's why it didn't fly. Here's what you need to work on to get it to go next time. Okay. So the board does not redo the work they've done. Also, and I know you guys do this because I've seen it at NAR meetings, always good when if you're involved in a certain committee like MLS or professional standards or whatever, to go to those committee meetings at Illinois Realtor and NAR meetings, convention coming up here, and see what's coming down the pike, so to speak. Professional standards is always great because you knew what was coming in the future. Okay, so someone mentioned an agenda. I think Patty mentioned an agenda. So let's start with an agenda. Okay, so having an agenda is a good thing. Circulating an agenda and the minutes in advance is good. How many meetings have you walked into where the minutes were plopped down in front of you, and in 30 seconds they say, okay, I move the minutes be approved? No one's read them, right? Is there a question there somewhere? I thought I heard somebody. I do not have, oh, there's a chat box. Hold on. My chat box just popped up. Very good. Okay. So once again, circulate the agenda and minutes in advance. So let's start by looking at an agenda. This is from Robert's Rules. Call to order, bring the meeting to order. Some kind of roll call, or somehow you have to see if who's present, who's not, to make sure you have a quorum. Okay, and then you have approval of the agenda. Now here's why, and since I've been doing these, I've had a couple associations actually trust me and start doing this, and I think you'll find it works out better. I know this happened once at either IAR or NAR meetings, where someone at the end of the meeting brings something up to the last second, and it's a very, very important topic, and half the people have left already. You go to any of our board of directors meetings, half of them are gone by, a couple hours because they got planes to catch. So anyhow, and so what happens is it stops people from bringing up stuff under new business at the very end when everybody's leaving. Okay. So if someone wants to, if you want anything to add it now. Anybody got anything for new business you want to add? Sometimes a topic may be so important, you bring it up to the beginning and you talk about it first. Or you could have a meeting where that's only one topic, that's fine. But approving an agenda in advance can stop those surprises at the end. Some of you may also have a consent agenda where you move the consent agenda and everything on there passes automatically. Now remember, if you do use a consent agenda, it only takes one person to say, I want that pulled from the consent agenda and put on the regular agenda. And there's no discussion, doesn't take a vote, don't have to give a reason. They can just ask for it to be pulled off the consent agenda. Then you have reading of the approval of minutes. Some people like to do this formally and have a motion and second it. Robert's rules gives you some flexibility there. You can wait for comments, say if there's no additions or corrections, they stand approved as distributed. Then you have officer and committee reports. Generally, you always have a treasurer report if you're on a board of directors. Some committees will have reports, some won't, some will go into the consent agenda. So once again, having an agenda is also kind of a mental checklist of what things need to be talked about at the next meeting. Special meetings or task force, recommendations from these groups require action, even if there's no second. This is the one exception to Robert's rules on seconding a motion. I had this actually happen to me once in a zoning change at my local town. Went in for a zoning change, zoning board of appeals approved it unanimously, went to the city council. The person in charge of zoning made the motion. For some reason, no one seconded it. And the mayor quickly says, dies for lack of second, move on. So I had to run home, get my Robert's Rules of Order book and come back. And at break time, I got a hold of the city council and said, here you go, you have to vote on that. You can't just say it dies for lack of second. So once again, any kind of special task force that's appointed, you have to vote on those. This does not necessarily require a second. Unfinished or old business. This was where you talk about whatever happened is whatever that we did at the last meeting. Okay. And then you have new business. And once again, this is where you could have those surprises come up. And then at the end, you always have the announcements, talk about next meeting or upcoming events you have, and then adjournment. Some people will just say adjourn. Other people will say they'll make a motion on it. So anyhow, that's your basic agenda there. Questions there? If not, we're going to jump into, let's start a meeting here and talk about Robert's Rules of Order, okay? Probably a lot of you thought Robert was his first name, but it was really his last name. He had three first names, Henry Martin Robert. And he was an engineering officer in the Army back in the mid 1800s. He was asked to preside over a meeting without much warning at his church. So there wasn't much out there on how to run meetings back then. So he was transferred to various parts of the US where he found virtual parliamentary anarchy. There was no one really in charge of anything. So he brought out, his first book was in 1876, Pocket of Rules of Order for Deliberative Assemblies. And by the way, his family still runs, you can go to, I believe, robertrulesoforder.com. His family, his descendants have taken over, keeping this thing up to date, so to speak. So why do we have parliamentary procedure and why is it important? Well, first of all, it lets us get through a meeting, and it also, one of the problems you have is if you do not follow Robert's Rules of Order, okay? I guess you have that option. Let's just don't follow them. If you do that, and one of your members challenges it, let's say you decide to build a new building or something and it's not followed by Robert's Rules of Order, they could actually challenge in court. And my guess is most of your bylaws, you have to look it up, most of your bylaws say that your committee meetings will follow Robert's Rules of Order. Almost every organization in the United States has that in there somewhere. They may not have it, most of them do. So you want to make sure that you have some good rules for you as a referee to follow. really as a leader, you're kind of a referee. Okay. And by the way, being a referee, it's their game, not yours. Okay. And say some people will have an official parliamentarian, not all of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow a fixed order of business. That's one thing Robert was very keen on, was having a set order. So what can individual member do? Okay, well, they can do the four in the middle here. The chair calls it to order and adjourns. Okay, but in between that time, individual members can make motions, second motions, debate motions, or vote on motions. Okay, so four basic things: the chair calls to order and adjourns. So there are four basic types of motions. Okay. And by the way, in the very last page of your outline, if you want to tear that off while we're looking at it, or if you want to tear it off later, it's a kind of a cheat sheet of what order you vote on things, and do require a second, etc. So a main motion is to introduce some kind of item that you want to vote on. Okay. And even though it's the most important thing on the table, it gives way to things that are of lesser importance when you're talking about which order you do it in. Okay. Then we have subsidiary motions. We basically call these amendments, right? We want to change the main motion. So that's the second thing we talk about. Then you have privileged motions. They could bring up an item that was urgent, unrelated, whatever. I remember, I can't remember what meeting it was. We were in Oak Brook or someplace. I remember Marilyn Glazer was on the committee, and the fire alarm went off in the hotel. And we said, do we leave or do we not leave? So, it was kind of one of those privileged things. Do we recess or do we not recess? And then we have incidental motions. Once again, we're questioning the procedure. Might be called point of order. Means I think what you're doing is out of order. You're not following Robert's Rules of Order. So when someone says point of order, they're trying to say, I don't think we're following the rules and we should be. Okay. So these are handled in opposite order than what I have them listed here in. So if you look at that back sheet, you will see that the main motion is clear at the bottom, even though it's the most important thing, and they're handled in the opposite order of what you might think they would be. So how do you present a motion? First of all, you legally need to obtain the floor and just not scream out. Okay, you need to wait till there's no one speaking. Obtain the floor. So you wait till that last speaker has finished. Some people will stand up, whatever. But once again, you need to wait till the chair recognizes you to state your motion. Okay, and then you make your motion. Okay, speak clearly and concisely. Always. And by the way, here's one of the biggest problems we have. I make a motion, we don't do this. Well, here's a thought for you. Just don't make the motion and then you won't do it. Okay. You don't make negative motions. You make a no motion. Now, sometimes maybe you want to go on record what the board talked about and voted down. Fine. Make a positive motion and defeat it, right? That's another way to get it into the record that you were against a certain idea. Okay. But they need to be affirmative. And I would also tell you that if you have a long motion, I know at NAR you'll see this all the time. They'll take up a sheet, hand it to the president. They've already typed out their motion in advance. So if you got a long motion, that's a good idea. And most of our local associations, if you've got something you want to make a motion of, you might, talk to staff ahead of time or talk to the president and give them the verbiage that you want used, so you have some time to work on it. Also, you want to avoid personalities in your motions. Well, I don't think we should do what Sally says, so, once again, keep the personalities out of it. So you have to wait for someone to second your motion. If no one seconded, your motion dies, except for that one case I mentioned earlier. Okay. So after that's done, the chair should restate the motion. Okay. And then it has been moved and seconded, and now we got the motion on the table. Then you can move to vote directly if there's no discussion, or you can obviously have discussion. One of the biggest problems I see here, I see this happen all the time, is once you start discussing it, you change your mind. And the maker says, well, I'll withdraw the motion. Does the second agree? Yeah, okay, we withdraw the motion. Sorry, folks, not allowed by Robert's rules. There is, once it's made and seconded, this motion now belongs to the group, and the group will decide what happens to that motion, okay? Not the maker. The maker and second have nothing to do with it once it's on the table, okay? So obviously, once it's made and seconded, we start debate. And this is where, if you make the motion, you should be given the option to speak first, okay? Sometimes people will make a motion and start rambling right away. You need to say, hold that thought, need a second, then I'll get back to you. Once again, be very calm, okay? So, so the mover should be the first to speak, and really all comments and stuff should be made towards the chair, not to the person. You see, sometimes in a situation where the maker of the motion knows a lot about the topic, might have been a task force, so everybody's asking them the questions. At some point, it might be okay to pass the gavel to that chair and let, I know at NER we did that a lot when you had a subcommittee. We let the subcommittee chair actually take the gavel and run that part of the meeting during that topic, okay? So you don't need to set a time limit up front, but if it gets carried away, you may have to. If you have a really big, huge group or something really controversial, you may say, okay, you have 2 minutes or whatever, and then have someone keep track of the time. And the mover should not speak. Actually, once you speak, you should not speak again until everyone else has a chance. Doesn't always happen that way. On smaller groups, it's not going to happen that way. But anyhow, in a large group, that's how it should happen. And then obviously, you vote on the question, okay? A good thing, once debate is subsided, it's a good thing for a chair to say, are we ready to vote? Are there any other questions? Seeing no more discussion, let's take a vote. And once again, always good to repeat the motion at that time, especially if you've had a lot of conversation, okay? So also someone may say, call the question. That's really incorrect verbiage. The correct verbiage is I call the previous question, which is call the previous question is really what it's called, not let's vote. So how do you amend a motion? This is sometimes where things go sideways. We start getting amendments. If you get more than one amendment, the chairs get really out of hand sometimes. So a member of the body, once again, can change a motion by adding language, removing language, substituting language, or any combination thereof. So you're changing something in the language. It can only be amended one time, okay? So you cannot have two different amendments on the floor at one time, okay? So you can, excuse me, you can amend the motion and you can amend the amendment. Make sure I get this straight. I may have said it wrong. So you can have the main motion, an amendment, and an amendment to the amendment, but that's it. So, and you always work backwards. So the first thing you do if you have a single amendment on the floor, you would say, okay, discussion on amendment only. And if they start off on the main motion, say, excuse me, hold that thought till later. We're only discussing the amendment now, okay? Just to be polite about it. So that's how you start off. So nothing on the main motion. So so you'd vote on the amendments then before you vote on the main motion, and the chair should be clear each time you're voting what you're voting on and what's been discussed. So let me give you an example here. Might be the best way. Okay. So a motion is made at your board of directors meeting to buy 2 new laptops for the association office. Okay. Bob amends to say at a cost not to exceed 3,000. That'd be reasonable, right? We need to have a cap on it, right? So before it goes any farther, Sally pops up and says, oh, they should be Apple laptops. The chair should deny that amendment, okay? Now, if Sally wanted to say, I think it should be 4,000 or 5,000, that's fine. But now you're adding something else, okay? You're adding something else to it, all right? So George amends to say 4,000. That's allowed, okay? So once again, we're amending the amendment, okay? We're not, but the problem with Sally's thing is it's a whole different topic, so to speak. So now what happens, you discuss and vote on the 4,000. Let's say that's approved. You would now go back and say, okay, we have an amendment on the floor that a cost not exceed 4,000. So you discuss and vote on that amendment. And then Sally says, I'd like them to be Apple. We're going to allow it this time, right? Because we're back to the main motion now. Once we're back to the main motion, we're going to do that. So then you discuss and vote on the Apple. And then Luis says, I think it should be from the Computer Solutions. They've always done us a good job. That's allowed, okay? So then you discuss and vote on the vendor, okay? And then you go back and discuss, you say, we're now ready to vote on the main motion as amended. And with all this stuff we have here, read it, okay? It'll be, we have a motion on the floor to buy 2 new laptops for Association Office at Apple laptops at a cost not to exceed $4,000 from Computer Solutions, okay? So we got all of our amendments done, did we not? Anyhow, that's how that would be handled, okay? Once again, remember, all amendments need seconds before discussion can start. So when you vote on a motion, it should be on page 7 now, I believe, 6 or 7. It depends on the situation you're in, on your organization, and really, there's a big difference on voting on a new office building versus voting on chicken or fish for the next meal, right? Big difference. Some of your, I would call them smaller committees, like social committees, whatever. A lot of the time, stuff is just done by consent, right? Say, okay, is fish okay with everybody? Everybody okay with fish? Anybody object? Okay, we're all fish then. I mean, it's very simple. Then you don't have to have all this kind of stuff all the time. You don't have to have every single thing go to the extent that you would at a board of directors meeting. Okay, so how do you vote? There's 5 different ways you can vote. You can vote by voice. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. How do you want to do that? You can do a roll call vote. I remember a couple of times at NER, it would be so close. I remember one time it was very close, and the chair said it carries, and everybody started screaming, hollering, and they went back and did a roll call vote, which takes forever. Jim's shaking his head. He's seen that then. Yeah. So anyhow, then they do a roll call vote. And then general consent, once again, that's a lot of your smaller committees would have those. Or you can raise your hand, or you can stand. That's another way to do it. It's called by division. Or you can do it by ballot, okay? I was on the Realtor of the Year committee for IER several times, and all those were done secret paper ballot. Only one person really saw who was being voted for, okay? So when you're voting, before you vote, this is when anybody who has a conflict of interest should state that and should abstain from discussion or voting. Now, I hear a lot of people say, well, they should leave the room. That's not necessary by Robert's Rules of Order. That's an option you have. Let's say that you're getting ready to landscape the association office, new landscaping. And one of your board of directors happens on a landscaping company. Obvious conflict of interest. They can't vote, they can't discuss. But I might want them in the room to ask them questions. Hey, what do you think about yews versus barberry or whatever? Ask them what kind of plants or something. You might you might get some information out of them, right? So once again, that's up to you whether they leave or not. In some situations, it might be appropriate for them to leave. Oftentimes, as I mentioned, people scream out, call for the question, and once again, you still have to obtain the floor to do that. It's called moving the previous question. You need a second. There's no debate on it, and you need 2/3 vote to move on. Sometimes the chair would just say, are we done discussing? Anybody else like to add to the discussion? And if no one says anything, then you can just move on. You don't need to really go through this, okay? But that's one thing you can do. Now, here's one that I would tell you, I learned many years ago, but never used it. I don't know if I ever would, because this could be political suicide for you. A chair or a president of a group has a right to vote in 3 situations. Number 1, it's a ballot issue, like you're voting on new officers. That's fine. We've always heard the chair breaks a tie, okay? But did you know a chair can vote to make a tie and thus defeat the motion? So let's say it's 5-4. And the chair says, I vote no, motion's defeated. I'm telling you, you're gonna get some backlash from that. You're not gonna have some happy people. You better feel really, really, really strongly about what the topic is if you want to go down that road. I would not be happy. And here's one that always frustrates me is the chair should announce all outcomes. Motion carries, motion fails. Very simple 2 words in a voting. Need to announce it. I've seen too many times they just move on and people assume that what happens. I don't care if it's unanimous. Motion carries. That way we got it for the record. I mentioned there are ways to get rid of stuff. There are 3 basic ways. There's other ways, but there's 3 kind of basic ways people. You're in a meeting and you kind of realize, hey, this isn't such a good idea. We need to discuss this more. We need to do more research. So you want to get rid of it. So I give you here 3 ways you can get rid of something. You can make a motion to table it, okay? Of course, the option is always there to take it back off the table if you want to by reconsideration. Requires a second. There's no debate. All you need is 51% to pass. Motion to postpone indefinitely. Another strategy that's used requires a second. You can debate this and discuss the main motion because time may be a factor in this. And once again, majority vote required. Or you can do the old famous, let's refer it to the committee. Okay, you can always do that one. Seconds required. Once again, this is when you start and then you think, well, this isn't complete enough. They need more details for us. So anyhow, seconds required. Debate can discuss the main motion and majority vote is required. So a good chairman asks, what's the purpose of a motion? Does it require a second? Now, I gave you that cheat sheet in the back there. Illinois Realtors used to have these that they gave out. Maybe Sue, a colleague, might recognize these. They're little plastic cards that have parliamentary motions on them. Wayne used to always pass these out at the committee chairs. And always good to see what debatable, whatever. It always had a nice little cheat sheet for you. But it's always good to have something in front of you, some kind of Robert's Rules cheat sheet to show you what happened. So is it secondable? Is it debatable? Is it amendable? What motions does it yield to? What kind of votes required? And can it be reconsidered? So all those kind of things are on some of these cheat sheets, charts. Now, some of you might be old enough to remember Everett Dirksen. He was from, was it not Quincy? Was he Quincy? Jay, it's over that way. Galesburg, I think maybe. Or Old Center said, I'm a man of fixed and unbending principles, the first of which is to be flexible at all times. And to be a good parliamentarian, to run a good meeting, you have to have some kind of flexibility, folks. Have to do that. So in summary, you want to allow motions that are in order, even though you don't agree with them. You have members obtain the floor properly. You speak clearly and concisely. Obey the rules of debate. And I would tell you, enjoy debating. Okay, I think I enjoy debate sometimes. And be courteous. You can be courteous. So anyhow, we can't get you out of here with a little bit of a quiz. It's the old teacher in me. So if you have that last page, if I have that last page, it's got the Robert's Rules at a Glance. Should be your last of your outline. I have nine questions here. I want you to write down the number 1 to 24, the number for each one of these. So I want you to do a little research here. What would it be called to raise the room temperature or bring it back? So I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to look at these over and see if you can figure out which ones these they would be. One minute. 1 minute. Twenty seconds. If you got questions, put them in the chat box, or we'll take them after we give you these answers. Okay. Let's see how you did. See if anybody got 100. You can brag about how many you got right. Ask to raise the room temperature would be 21. Raise a question of privilege. Okay. Bring back a table item is number 10, to take it from the table. Once again, it'll explain it needs a second, and there's no debate. Bifurcate a motion. That is 15, divide a motion. I remember, well, I can't remember the board, the NAR president's name from Missouri. He used the word bifurcate all the time, and everybody goes, anybody know what bifurcate means? And God, I can't remember his name now. Short, stocky kind of guy. So anyhow, he always it means divide it in half. You got, maybe it has two different objects. You can make it two different motions. Object to a voice vote. And that is number 17, to call for a roll call vote. The chair said it passed, but I don't think so. Override a recent vote. That is 12. maybe you just did something and you realize, uh-oh, we screwed up, can't do it that way. You get more information and you have to change it. So that would be to override a recent vote. Object to considering an idea. That is 16. That is just, you're objecting to the whole thing. Really, it's going to be the chair's decision is what happens here. Putting something on the floor. Object to a parliamentary procedure, and that is 18. Raised to a point of order. So once again, sometimes you see, excuse me, object to consider the question takes a 2/3 vote. Appeal a decision of the chair is a majority vote, but point of order is obviously a decision of the chair. So you'll see there's a couple of decisions of the chairs in there. The chair has to decide what happens. Call a question we talked about already. That's number 8. Call the previous question. And then to amend something is number 4. So how many did you get right? You might get them all right. You did give yourself a smiley face or something down there in the chat box. I don't see any smiley faces yet. Okay. So anyhow, thank you. Questions. Got to have questions, obviously. You guys have been quiet today because most of you know this probably stuff already. Would be partially my guess. Questions? Okay. Wow, quietest group ever.
Christopher, go ahead, jump in.
Hey, Kerry, more of a comment. Back to minutes.
Okay.
I think a lot of people are confused about what should belong in minutes, and it should be call to order, adjourn, all the motions and the outcomes, and attendance. Minutes should not be 3 pages of everything we talked about.
Right.
That should be the extent of minutes.
Sometimes though, like on someone's called to vote, so might say, okay, we discussed the pros and cons of the 2 different laptop things. The pros and cons were discussed, and then a motion was taken. You might want to just have, 1 sentence of what that motion was about, or something, Chris, just to make sure everybody understands. But there should be no, Chris said this is a horrible idea, then Joe disagreed with him and said, no, we're going to do it anyhow. And that kind of stuff should not be in minutes. Should be no names, all that kind of stuff. You can bring up some highlights of what discussion was, but it should be minimal.
So what we do at Heartland is very similar. For our board meeting, we're very formal, and it's only the motion, and that's all. But for our committee minutes, we often put in a little bit more historical information. Agreed, Carrie. We're certainly not going to put in there who said what and opinions, but a little bit more historical, so that if you read them, if you missed last month's meeting, you can pick up and get a feel for what took place. So we kind of use both at Heartland.
That's cool. About a year or so ago, I just moved, so I have purged. I had like 15 filing cabinets in my basement, and I purged. And I had someone from Bloomington call me and says, well, "We got an issue with something in the budget. Can you give us the minutes and the budgets from the 80s?" And I go, "Well, I could, but I just shredded all that stuff a few weeks ago. I kept all that stuff forever, all committee notes. By the way, what I did was, for every committee I was on, I had a 3-ring binder, and I kept the minutes and the agenda in chronological order. So I 3-hole punched them, put them in there. Today I would scan them, and put them in a computer file or something. I wouldn't do that.
And the association should take care of that, not the president or any of the staff. The association should take care of all that.
Absolutely. Bobby has a question. When public comment is made, can the board members debate with the not talking about a realtor association? Okay, go ahead, Bobby. Go ahead and unmute yourself and explain this. I don't quite understand it, what you're asking.
So when a member of the association makes comments regarding things that are going on with the board, can board members debate with that person about their thoughts and then try to refute those, or is that really the time for a board to be doing that?
Sure. I mean outside of a meeting. I mean, yeah, let's say that someone I mean, it happens all the time. People, they want to oust their chair. They want to oust this. We had a board president once, we asked him to resign, and he did. And that was obviously discussed outside the meeting before we got there.
Well,
But when
Bobby, but Bobby, be careful too. You note on here that it's outside the Realtor Association. So if you're talking about a government body, they have to meet the Open Meetings Act. And so the public should only make comment during the public comment section at the very beginning of a meeting. And once that section is open and then closed, there should not be any more conversation with the public. The meeting is closed to the public at that point, is how the Open Meetings Act would work.
Yeah. I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals for many years, and we had to take an Open Meetings Act class every year online, you know, and once he's correct you. And what the problem was, people would come and start asking questions and stuff and going, this is really not a debate. This is, you make your comments and then they'll talk, you know, if they may or may not talk about it later. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah. Once again, government bodies work differently than volunteer organizations. Oh, Tom Lundstedt. I remember Tom. Bifurcation. Okay. So anyhow, I thank you for having me. I wish you all good luck in your year to come, and enjoy this wonderful weather before the snow be flying before you know it. So anyhow, good luck to all of you in your positions.
Let me just say thank you so much, Carrie. We really appreciate your expertise and knowledge and your ability to share it with us. To everybody that's in the audience, I did add the Robert's Rules of Order to the chat. So if you'd like to download it from there, if you don't get a chance to do that, you can always call your AE and they'd be happy to provide it with you. All right. Thanks for attending, everybody.